That's awesome, man. And you're in BC, right? You're
Yeah, I'm
here
in Chilliwack. Yeah,
Chilliwack. That's
yeah.
awesome, man. Have you always lived around that area?
No, I grew up most of my life in Edmonton. I
Okay.
moved here about 25 years ago.
Just to
So yeah.
escape the winters or what?
Oh, absolutely correct. My
Yeah.
when I was first married to this other lady, we came out here for our honeymoon in like 82 or something. And that was October, late October we got married, and I went, "Holy cow, like there's no snow here. Like this is insane." I'm moving here. And I like
Yeah.
hiking too. So I do a lot of hiking and which just kind of helps to kind of get your mind into that kind of meditative state for writing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I can talk a lot about I can talk about some of my books and stuff as well, but I also took, I'll let you know now, a course called Context Associated. I don't know if you've heard of it. So it was a self-development course. So I use a lot of the things I learned in there for my books and my characters. But it also they would talk about a lot of how your mind influences the outcome of your life, basically, and how you can change your life. So yeah, so we can talk a lot about that because I know a lot of your subjects are more along the self-development and spiritual type aspects. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I guess before we jump into it, well, yeah, I guess I'll say this first. I was gonna say, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of tell people what you're all about and where
yep,
they can find you online or whatever. But yeah, I do enjoy the content of self-development, mental health, and like kind of self-help. It is definitely one of the things that changed
yep,
my life completely, and I like the way that you kind of phrase that. Maybe that'll be the first thing we kind of chat about today is like,
hmm,
and I've kind of become re-obsessed with the idea of how much our minds and what we think about, what we speak about, the way we think, the way we speak, and how much
completely.
those completely changes our lives.
Yep.
But before we jump into that, yeah, I guess I want to give you an opportunity. Tell people like kind of who you are, what you're all
Yeah.
about, and
Yeah.
where they can find you if they're brand new to your stuff as well.
Okay. Sounds cool.
Sorry, that's your chance. Just give you.
Oh, right now, are we live now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we're not live. This is a recording,
Oh, okay. You
but
can leave
yeah,
this in if you want.
yeah. I usually just jump right into it. I kind of,
That's cool.
yeah.
So,
I'm a.
so yeah. So for those that haven't heard of me before, I'm Frank Talaber. I live in Chilliwack, BC. I've currently have about 14 published novels. Three of them are collections of short stories. As of last week, I've now have 110 published short stories. Many of them have been published 7 or 8 times or more. Not all, but I also the genres I write in, if that's what you're thinking about, I usually do paranormal, crime thrillers, murder mysteries, urban fantasies is my main stuff I write in. I also do science fiction. I've done romance, Celtic romance, comedy, virtually every genre but westerns because I tell most people I don't care to ride horses. So,
And
and
how?
in some, yeah,
Sorry,
and
go
some of my
ahead.
books too are under a female name, under Felicity Talisman, because of the more romantic stuff. I went to a romance writers convention many years ago when I was first starting to get into this, and they said, "Well, most guys," the lady said to me, "Well, most guys don't know how to do romance, let alone write the stuff." I says, "I know." So I switched to female name because um, back in the 30s and 40s, there were a lot of female authors that were writing under male names because guys wouldn't buy books written by women back then. So I just kind of reversed it.
Dude, I love that. I actually
Yeah,
love that idea. That's
yeah,
smart, dude.
yeah. And also at that romance writers convention, when I first got there, this is a funny story. So I first got there and I had no idea how few guys wrote romance at that time. And I was late and I wanted to see the opening, speech. And I ran up and said, "Hi, I'm Frank Talbert. I need to get here. I want to get up and listen to the speech." She looks at me, she looks at the other girl, and they tap their shoulders together and go, "He's the other guy registered here out of 200 authors." I'm like, "Holy cow."
The other guy, so there was two guys.
Two guys out of 200 authors at a romance writers convention. I had no
Wow.
idea. I thought a lot of guys would be writing that kind of stuff, but apparently not.
Well, I've always heard, I don't know if this is like checks out or anything like that, but I've always heard that Men are more visual, women are more like kind of audio reading.
Absolutely correct.
So men go
Abs
more
yeah.
towards the movies and the shows, and the women go more towards like romance in novels. Like
Yep.
let's be to use your phrase, let's be frank. Men would just go to porn most of the time, right?
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. One of the things I learned at that Romance Writers Convention, they were talking about the differences between men and women.
Hmm.
So this lady says, so women like,
Imagine
the
like they
evening.
like sorry.
Yeah, they like the evening out. They like the roses, the romance, the red wine, fire, kissing, all that kind of stuff that leads up to actual, sex.
Yeah.
And it's just guys start at the actual sex.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is funny, but that's cool, man. So I think that's really smart actually to use a pen name like that. I think it does actually get me thinking though, because
Yep.
how many times or how many things do we think are written down by somebody who's it's not written by them?
That's right. That's true. And with all the transgender things going on in this world, I don't think it's becoming a big issue anymore. I'm happily married. I enjoy being with my wife and stuff. But I do think along a lot of lines, as my wife says, you're more female orientated and she's more male orientated. Later on, she's going to be watching, the Broncos on TV, which I'll watch with her, but I'm not a big fan. And I got her hooked on hockey. I got her hooked on baseball this year with the Blue Jays, and now she wants to watch all the baseball games.
Oh yeah. Some people are like that, honestly.
Yeah,
One of my like literally actually my best friend and his wife, it's funny because the last time I'm into martial arts, I really like martial arts and
yeah,
fighting. It's kind of the sport that I watch. And
yeah,
the last time that I had, friends over, I had my buddy and his wife, another buddy over, and my buddy asks me, "Oh, who's on the fight card tonight? Like who's on the schedule for fights?"
yeah.
And his wife starts rattling off every single fight like faster. I had to look it up, and before I could pull it up on my phone, his wife is rattling off all the fights, like the lineup for that night. And
Wow.
I'm like, it's like, sometimes you never know, right?
You
You
don't,
just
you don't, and the thing, the definition of a good relationship is where you enhance each other's features. One of the things I'll talk about later in this course I took, the definition of a relationship is a place where you feel bigger and better about yourself in it than out of it. So if you're in a relationship, both people should be enhancing each other's lives. Now, there will be times when you have fights and stuff, but for the most part, it should make you a better person and the other person a better person. So one of the things I learned in those courses was if you're in a relationship and you're feeling crappy about yourself all the time and the other person's dragging you down or whatever, why are you in it? Why are you taking your life down when you should be concentrating on making yourself a better person? You become a better person by getting out of it and starting your own life again, which for a lot of people is extremely scary. A lot of people just can't do that. And that's why one of the things I did learn in those courses too is that's why things like children of, let's say, alcoholics marry alcoholics. It leads into another thing that's called the comfort zone. They get comfortable with being in this situation. So if you're brought up unhappy and kind of depressed and whatever, that's kind of what you're attracting to your life, and that's a person that you're being attracted to as well. Um, until you learn what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, it's hard to get out of the comfort zone and change. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always thought that we get like addicted to our depression and anxiety in the
Oh
sense
yeah.
that like when you get like a physical addiction to a substance, a liquor or whatever it is,
Yeah.
your brain like is kind of just wired. Oh, we had a good day. Oh, we had a bad day. The result is I'm gonna go get loaded. I'm gonna go for a drink. I'm gonna go do this
Hmm.
thing.
Yep.
And the same way our brain's neurologically wired to go into that like depressed, anxious kind of, oh, this person said this to me, then my brain goes to this area, like this
Yep.
mood, this
Yep.
reaction, whatever it is. Like we become addicted to it. And then there's the other side of It's like socially incentivized. You know, people nowadays, when they see somebody, everyone's told like you have to go out, you have to validate everything. Everything is like legitimate
Yeah.
and validatable, and everything is, there's nobody nowadays, and you can argue whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. We had, even I'm probably the last, like, I'm on the cusp of like the generation where like I had coaches that would say like, dude, you made a commitment. You're showing up today. You're
Yes.
doing your best. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Deal with your emotions. Like, check your baggage at the
Yep.
door. I was told that when I got my first jobs. It was like, when you walk in here, you're an employee and you're doing your best. Like, it
Yeah, I
doesn't
agree.
matter what's going on at school or home. You check your baggage at the door.
Yeah,
This is
exactly. And
business.
I agree. The problem with the younger generation now is one of my friends, a fellow author, is a teacher, and she said, there are certain students I am not allowed to say no to.
Oh
So,
yeah, dude. I don't even
yeah,
think they
so
give grades anymore, do they?
yeah, I don't even think they do that. So the problem is, and she said, yes, there is. It's rising a lot. So a lot of the younger kids now, they'll commit suicide or take drugs or something because they can't stand the fact that someone said no to them. Or when they have their first job and the boss says you can't do this or you're fired, and they're like, what, what? No one's ever said no to them in their lives, and I think that's insane. There's actually a perfect example. She had one other student that was in one of her classes, and that student would freak out. So they were told when he freaks out, you leave the classroom, everybody gets out, and he's allowed to trash the place and do what he wants till he calms down.
You're
And
kidding.
she said, "Well, that's lunacy." So he pulled that off in her class one time, and she yelled at him, says, "Stop! Stop doing that right now! Sit down! Shut up! I'm going to talk to you." And he did, and he never pulled that off in her class ever again.
Yeah.
So, like you said, there's part of learning is that sometimes someone saying no to you is a good thing in many times because we have all these school sports now where they give everybody medals. Well, that's not teaching you to be a better person. You really, everybody wins. Well, no, everybody doesn't win. And if in any game, there's always a winner and a loser. The loser hopefully learns something from what they've done to become a better person, you know. But it's I think it's crazy what they're doing to the younger generation currently.
Yeah, it
So
is it is definitely bizarre. It's funny that we got into that quickly, but I do like
that's
it.
fine.
No, it is something that I think deeply troubles a lot of people, definitely around, like, I'm 30 years old. I was born in
Yeah,
95. So I've seen it. Like I said, I'm kind of on the cusp. I have an
yeah, you
older
are.
sister, I have a younger
Yeah,
sister. I have older friends, I have younger friends. I train in martial arts, and so there's teenagers, there's guys older than me. And so I kind of have seen the difference between the generations of, I think I've always tried to find a way to kind of think about what truly happens that is so detrimental, because you have people that, like, I'm not trying to shame anybody, but it's like you have people that, like, they have a tough conversation with their professor and they need a safe space, or they have like a tough conversation with their boss and they're like, this is the end of the world. They're like,
yeah,
and again, maybe it's because I work in the trades, I work in construction, so I've experienced a little bit more tougher conversations here and
yeah,
there. They're not afraid to tell you that you're being, retarded, or you're being, whereas these words would
yeah,
make certain people crumble. Like, I'm
yeah,
not even exaggerating. Like, I have people in my life that if you said that word around them, they recoil physically. Like, you know what
wow,
I mean? Like, it's like, and it's just because the way that I think about it is like we are kind of sold this utopian view of the world of like, oh, people are going to be respectful, people are going to do this, people are going to do that. And if they're not, words are violence. So you can just start lashing out at them instantly. And because
hmm,
they're attacking you. It's not
yeah,
just words they're using, it's because it's a physical attack.
yeah,
And then
it is.
they get in into the real world and they experience the real world for the first time, and you see like, oh, actually the grizzly bear doesn't give a shit if the deer wants to have some water or doesn't feel safe.
Yep,
The grizzly bear's gonna fucking chase him and eat him if he doesn't get
yep,
hightailing right now.
Yeah.
And so like that you could be I don't know, change that analogy however you like, but it's like in reality a lot of the time your feelings are actually the least significant part of the situation. And not only that, but they follow your behaviors. So if your
Hmm.
feelings allow you to behave in a way that's going to make you feel worse again, like it's like you don't listen to those feelings. It doesn't matter how you feel. Do the behavior that's going to put you in a better place. That's the way I
True.
look at it.
True. And I talked earlier about the comfort zone. So there was an interesting in those courses, there was an interesting example. So this is actually a documented case. So they took a salesman that was doing super well in a super rich area, and they said, so this company said, we're gonna take you, we're gonna put you in this bad area so we can up the sales. And we're gonna take this other guy and we're gonna put him in your area so he gets, more sales and a better life. So after a few months, what happened is the guy that the good guy that the well-thinking guy that moved into the poor area started doing very well. Sales went up dramatically. The opposite happened in the other one though, because the other guy was not used to having money and used to making money and used to being successful. The sales plummeted in that area. So that's what they're talking about, the comfort zone. So you got to realize, which kind of leads me into another thing. Probably the biggest thing I ever learned in those courses was the statement, I attract to me that which occurs, which means that if I think I'm going to be successful, if I think I can do well, if I think I'm going to have fun, I will. If I say that to myself, we actually learn to phrase certain things in our heads all the time, especially at night before you go to bed. So
Mm.
you kind of get in that mind aspect of saying, yes, I will attract to me that which occurs. I will attract to me goodness and richness. Why? Because I'm a great person. I have a great attitude. I want to have a great life. I will have a great life. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's fire. That I have been drilling that into my brain a lot recently. Actually, my conversation with Mikhail brought that up actually because I've
Yes.
always been a very I guess I'd say like tangible, black and white. If I can't feel it and touch it, I don't believe in it. That's always how I've been. And it took me a while to actually come to grips with the fact that there is parts of this universe that I just cannot grip and understand, like literally and physically and spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah.
Like you just can't put your hand on it, and it is real. And so I've through like kind of prayer and meditation, I have kind of come to the conclusion that I think that there is superpower, like more power than I've ever given credit to, which is why I exaggerated a bit now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like there is a superpower behind positive thinking and positive
Is-
speaking.
There is. One of the first things that got me into writing actually was in grade 12. I took this creative writing course, and the guy was it was an unusual course. And I thought, well, I kind of like writing. I've written a couple of stories. I wasn't that good, but I really wanted to get into this. So, and when I do interviews, I always say this. So, opening in the class, the guy hands the course material. He said, "Here's your course material." I open it up, and it was just lined paper. And I put my hand up. I said, "Excuse me, there's nothing in here." He goes, "Oh yeah, your job's to fill it." I said, "What?" He says, "So we're going to teach you subconscious writing, which means that for 20 minutes each class, you're just going to write." And I said, "What? Write?" He goes, "Yes, just write." His whole idea was to get this sort of circular effect, pulling from the subconscious of the universe into your head and going and just writing. He says, "So no grammar, don't worry about grammar, don't worry about punctuation, just write." So the first few days, I would sit down and go, "Oh, the walls are still blue. That blonde girl's still sitting there, and I haven't get the guts to ask her out." Like dumb things, right?
Hmm.
But then after a while, it kicked in. And sometimes in those 20 minutes, I would sit down, pound out anywhere from 2 to 5 to 7 pages, just pouring stuff out. And then I got into like a character's head and just started pumping it. He goes, "That's exactly what I'm trying to get you to do.
Whoa.
Editing can come later, but the whole thing is just writing." So since then I can sit down. I write whole short stories in a single shot sometimes. I always come back later and edit it and re-edit it. I write by hand still because I can't. I type pretty fast, but I can't think fast enough on a typewriter when I'm getting into something because it just starts pouring out. And that's why I can write like whole chapters of books and scenes all along. One of the funniest stories was my good friend of mine is a dentist, and I knew this guy for 20 years. And he goes, and he loves my writing, and he's got all my stuff. And he says, "So why aren't any dentists in TV series? That's why you guys are all dweebs." And he goes, "Yeah, that's right." He says, "So give me a story." So I wrote a story about a dentist that has that afternoon about an unusual patient that's not human, and they end up becoming best friends. And he goes, "Wow!" And you pounded that out in the afternoon? I go, yeah. So then I threw in some technical details like tools that they use and all that kind of stuff. So I do a lot of research, and he was blown away. And I
That's
actually
really
wove that
cool.
into another. There's another contest had a TV series, so you had to put yourself into a TV series. So I used part of that story to weave myself into a Doctor Who show where I go back in time to 200 million years and was chased by dinosaurs.
That's hilarious. That's really cool. I love that, dude. That reminds me actually a lot of kind of like the Stephen Pressfield, the War of Art, like to find the mute. Have you read that book? Or sure.
That one I haven't.
Oh my goodness, you need to read that book. You seriously, it is exactly what you're talking about. The War of Art. And it's about going and like he basically says that like writing and you know who Stephen Pressfield is? He has some pretty famous books like like
I will check them out.
yeah, very famous books. I don't want to.
Pressfield?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. I always do lots of research, like Mikhail. Him and I become good friends. We only met a year ago at one of my writing events, or book selling events, and him and I are very much like-minded about a lot of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and we get along so well, and we kind of bounce things off each other's heads all the time.
You
Yeah.
would
So
love
back here, if you can see them, those are all most of my book covers. For those that if you can see those.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say
Yeah.
what so you've always kind of have you always been interested like how have you how did you become an author? Was it like always something you were interested? You said you started like pretty young, like
Yeah, I did.
17,
And one
18.
of the most profound things that happened to me, which kind of leads me to another aspect as well, is that you may have heard of the cutting down the golden spruce tree about 35 years ago in Haida Gwaii.
No, I the
Okay,
golden spruce tree. Oh,
yeah,
okay, yes.
yeah, yeah. So in reality, a guy in protest of logging of all things cut down this rare tree.
Mhm.
Um, Now, at that time, I hadn't written a novel yet. I was just writing short stories and ideas for all these books. And I went to the Victoria Museum, and downstairs in the lower floor, there's a section there, a dark room where they have all these totems. And I remember sitting there, and my wife had wandered away, and I said to myself, I swear to God, I can hear voices talking to me. And this one of my friends later, a First Nations fellow who's a master carver, said to me, "Well, that's because our race died off so fast from diseases and stuff when the white people came in." He says that we all of our most of our culture is oral, so we lost so much of our history and our legends and everything. So we believe in reincarnation. So our spirits are always reaching out to those that listen and can take us in and hear us. He says, so in a past life, you must have been like a shaman or maybe a spiritual First Nations type guy. He said, because they've reached into you. He said, and he said, the books of yours that I've read about First Nations people, he says that you write more in the lines of a First Nations person than most First Nations persons do. He says they're phenomenal. I says, thank you. You know,
That's crazy. And when was that? You said 80.
So that was about in the 80s. That was about 35 years ago this happened. So like I said, in what really happened is a guy that was a logger cut down this rare tree and to the Haida they consider the tree sacred because they believe there's a prince trapped inside the tree and then leaves it to golden sorrow for the prince. So that's their belief. In my book, what happens if when the tree gets cut down, the prince has now been released. He's evolving to an earth spirit because now he's been in this tree for like 300 years. Um, and the people that read the book said the scenes with him traveling through the earth and the trees and the spirits, he said those are phenomenal. They're spellbinding. In fact, what the best review I ever got in one of my books was on that one. A little over a year ago, a guy came to me at one of my events and he walked straight up and he goes, "You're a bastard." And I said, "What?" he says, so my wife bought that book of yours, and I'm not into the woo-woo traveling to the earth crap stuff. He says, but she was quite hooked. And I thought, I'm just going to read the first chapter and see what this is about. So he says, so I'm reading this book, and the other night is I'm reading this book for 3 freaking hours, can't put it down, thinking I got to get up and go to work. I says, that's the review. Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And so when you how long do you think that, like when you first started writing, you're taking that course? I guess you
Yep.
obviously were exposed to writing before that because you don't just take a course in writing.
No.
But how long until you were kind of thinking like, okay, this is my first book. I'm gonna write my first book.
I didn't subconsciously think that there were more, but there was. I actually entered a contest through the Vancouver paper. They had a weekly contest. You had to enter. They had a scene, and you had to write the scene after it. So I entered it every single week. I made the semifinals in a couple of them. I never won any of the scenes. So if you win the scene, that scene's the one that's published for the next week. But I got an honorary, thing for that. However, that got me into thinking about writing more stuff. And I ended up writing another book of mine. That's still my favorite book I've ever written. This one's called The Lure, and it's about the same character that's the shaman from the first book. So in the first book, a guy goes to Haida Gwaii as a reporter to investigate the story. He meets the lady, and they fall in love with each other. So there's romance in there. But the two with her uncle Charlie, who's the shaman, end up having to battle Raven, who also wakes up after the tree's cut down. Big woo-woo creator god dude, and have to battle Raven to stop him from changing the world back to the way it was. So this character is called Charlie Stillwaters, and he's probably one of the most insane characters I've ever written. He's a shaman, and as I've said to most people, people like him have seen and done things that are crazier, more insane than most people will ever do in their lives.
Hmm.
So he's quite off the wall, and most of my stories and my books and novels are actually quite off the wall as well. People say, "Wow, I have no idea where you get these ideas from," and to be honest, most of my ideas, not most, but a lot of them have come from people. I often will talk to people at events and stuff, and I've always said, "You can't write the shit that some people have experienced or lived in their lives." Like it's just wild. Some of the stories I've got from people. If
Oh
you
yeah, they always say reality's stranger than fiction, right?
It is. It is.
That's the
One quick
saying.
example. One of my books, Autumn Summer. I was at this one event, and this lady was sitting beside me. I was talking about ghosts and paranormal stuff. She goes, "Well, I don't have a ghost story, but I have a really strange one for you." I go, "Tell me." She says, "So I find out on my wedding day I'm adopted." I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, I had no idea." So my husband to be and I, we lived in Ottawa, and every Mother's Day he would go to his mother's grave site at the cemetery and say hi to her because she died many years ago. And I'd always wander off. And so I always wandered off, but I always got attracted almost every year to this one gravestone. And I used to sit there and look at it and thinking, hmm. So after I find out I'm adopted, guess what? She looks up that woman and traces her down. That's her mother.
Holy
Uh,
shit.
exactly. And then she ends up finding out she's got another brother and sister that look just like her. And they say, "Oh yeah, she gave you up for adoption only because she was, she couldn't afford to have you. And she wasn't in a relationship at the time." And I thought,
Oh, so it
wow,
was the first, she was the first kid, right?
yeah, as the first kid. So I moved that into a book. And of course I always love putting twists
Holy
on
shit.
stories. And so the twist on that novel was, what if your mother gave you up for adoption, not because she didn't love you, because she was trying to protect you from an ancient curse? So guess what?
Whoa.
She runs into a spiritualist. Her name's Autumn. The spiritualist is called Summer. That's why it's called Autumn Summer. And they find out that they're Celtic, so they're called Anam Caros, which means that they've been they're soulmates, and they've gone through different generations and different genders and personalities, somehow always finding each other when they're
Whoa.
reborn.
Oh, that's
And
crazy.
yeah. So then Summer helps her find her parents because Autumn is adopted. Only guess what? Then the curse starts. So then now they have to deal with this witch that's coming after her.
Whoa. That's crazy because even just that person's story is freaking crazy.
I know.
I've
Like I said, you,
thought,
you can't write this stuff
oh yeah.
sometimes.
Oh yeah. I have had this thought recently and I've had this like when you get that feeling of like maybe you're like in a parking lot and you drive by somebody and you kind of see like somebody you like went to high school with or something like
Mm,
that. They've
mm,
got headphones on, they're walking into the store, but you're like driving and you kind of get the thought of like, should I go say hi to this person? Should I go say what's up? Like it's not every day I see them, it's kind of like
yeah.
a weird coincidence. Or you know, you're driving home from work, you're stressed out, you just want some silence, and your mom's calling you on your cell phone. Like these little times where we have almost like a suggestion from God to connect with somebody. And we
Yep.
just like kind of put it off because at least I do all the time because I'm always like, I don't want to bother them. They might be in a rush. I'm in a rush maybe, and I'm stressed out, or I'm coming home from work and I'm just beat and I'm just like, fuck, I don't want to talk to
Yeah.
people sometimes, you know? And I keep getting these like kind of feelings or this thought that it's like that literally is God trying to force connections or that so
Hmm.
having like that story it just kind of this is what I'm taking away from it is like that lady is just drawn to that gravestone like that's not a
Yeah.
coincidence like
No,
that's
and she knew she had this sense, all as a sense that there's something unusual with this person. I didn't do any research, I didn't do anything because I just thought just there was 100 or 200 gravestones there, but every year she would just sort of sit there and just contemplate, and somehow she knew.
that's
I've done a lot of research
crazy.
in like reincarnation as well, and there are some crazy stories of reincarnation for those people that don't really believe in it. Probably the best example I have is this. In like I think it was 1962. This boy, in England, he was in high school. He was having these. He was brilliant, but he would never talk to anybody. And a teacher said, "So the problem we're having is when you ask him questions in classes, he won't answer." He says, "So he needs some help." So they took him to, and eventually somebody does hypnosis, a psychotherapist. They hypnotize this kid, and he told them that he was an American soldier from the Second World War that not soldier, but airplane pilot that crashed in Germany,
Yes,
was
I've
put in concentration camps, and died there. So he gave him the name, rank, and serial number. He said, because the only thing I'm allowed to say is name, rank, serial number. And that's why he was so quiet, because he wouldn't say anything else from his last life. And so this is 62 or 65. They didn't have internet, nothing like this. So they wrote a letter to the American government to say, we have this guy's name, rank, and serial number. Can you tell me if this is legit? And they said, yeah, that guy was a pilot. He crashed and died in the concentration camps in the Second World War. And so now so that was probably one of the biggest causes or things I can remember about reincarnation. People often are reborn, I think, to either continue their soul's journey, because as far as I've read, is that this is the third dimension. There are many, it's like 7 or 8 dimensions up there, and this is just one step of your journey of your soul to keep going. And if you don't, some of the books I've read, they say if you don't learn the lessons in this life you need, you're coming back again and again. And then sometimes this is kind of a weird thought, but I read this too somewhere, is that when you come back as your first lifetime, let's say in a man instead of being in a woman for the last 5 or 6, a lot of people get attracted to that gender again, like males, because the last lifetimes they were female for the last 5 or 6.
mhm.
But if the theory is that if you don't get out of that and get away from that, you may not continue your journey. Don't know. It's
That's
just some
crazy.
wild thoughts.
Whoa, that's crazy. I never heard of that before. I actually, you
I
know
know.
what? I've always struggled. I was thinking about that today, reincarnation. I'm watching kind of a show that's like kind of like maybe not about reincarnation, but there's this crazy show where these people are on an island that they think is paradise, but it seems like it might not be. And I think that the all the plants and stuff are like dead people. I think they
Oh,
it's a really interesting. Anyways, I watch some weird shit, man. I'm really
well,
into
same here.
I like conspiracies. I like paranormal. I really struggle believing in a lot of it. Like I said, I've always been a very like tangible black and white guy. I never even really believed in God until like the last like decade. And
Mm,
it took me, yeah, 20 years. I went through that phase of just like, if there's a God, why do I feel this? Or
exactly.
why is this happening? Why is that happening? How could there be evil in the world? And it took me a long time to kind of rationalize those thoughts. But and I also just the idea of reincarnation as like a young as a Western kid that grows up, you know, in the 90s, it's not like a thing that seems real. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it just doesn't, I don't know why. Maybe it's my parents, the way I was raised, what I
Yep.
read as a kid, but
Yep.
I have heard that story before, and there's something in me that's just like, that's great. Like it's it's probably true.
Yeah,
It's probably true, and I just can't grasp it. And then once you realize, oh, it's probably true, and I just can't grasp it, then that part of me is just like, yeah, it's probably true. I just can't grasp it, and then
yeah.
it seems okay. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
some of the research have said that the memory of your previous lives is in the DNA in your cells, and
It
that's why
like,
some people remember it, other people don't, maybe don't want to remember it. There's another story of this lady that she starts speaking under hypnosis fluent ancient Scottish. And so they thought, well, that's weird. So if in England, as you know, each town or city virtually has a different dialect. So they figured this dialect out. And it is virtually word for word a dialect from like the 1600s in this one town in Scotland. And then she went on to say that there's a book that was very profound in my life. It's this one. Go look in the library if they still have it. And they went down there, and sure enough, that book was there. This 400-year-old book that was tucked away hidden.
that's
So,
crazy.
yeah. And even in there's another one where in England, this I can't remember the admiral's name. So they were trying to rebuild these ancient wooden sailing ships, but they couldn't remember some of the technology. And this one guy that said he was a builder in a past life, they hypnotized him, and under hypnosis, he started telling him the proper way to put wood together, build these things, and he knew stuff that nobody else had remembered, and everything he told him is what they
Whoa.
used.
Imagine
Um,
if they did that with the pyramids. Can we do that with the pyramids, please?
oh yeah.
Someone out there.
Pyramids. That's another one. All my books are fiction. I'm working on one nonfiction book right now. It's called "Trust Me, I Didn't Make This Shit Up." It's about all the unknown, refuted technology that the main archaeologists don't want to acknowledge. A huge section of
Whoa.
that book is about the pyramids. There is so much information about the pyramids that proves there is no way these guys, the pharaohs, built this thing, or
Hands
those
down.
three, anyways.
Hands down.
One of the biggest things that I learned is that when they first started opening up the main pyramid, they found coral and seashells growing inside and outside of the pyramid. So they've carbon dated this stuff to around 12 to 13,000 years old,
Hmm.
which means a couple of things. Back then, they do know that that part of Egypt was like a lush jungle,
Yeah.
and they suspected that had to have been underwater for thousands of years as well, because there's no way coral and seashells would grow in this thing, above ground. So that's the main thing that proves that these are far older than we suspect.
I have heard, I actually do agree with you. I just
Yeah,
have to say, I have
yeah.
heard that they use seashells in their kind of a concrete mix because it's very hard and but it's also brittle, so you could break it down easy. I heard that, and apparently
Hmm.
there's seashells and shit in the sidewalks in like Florida, for example. Like apparently, like it's just something that they used to make mortar back in the day, but that being said, I 100% agree. I don't think that
The
the
Egyptians'
pyramids.
currents, no,
The thing is, I don't know if they're Egyptians or not. Just not the Egyptians we're told. Just
no,
not. Yeah,
no. I agree.
that's what I think. They're way older than they think. They were probably inherited by somebody else. Like there's no way
Mhm.
that they were tombs. I This is my personal belief. I don't want to speak to your beliefs, but I don't
Yeah,
believe
that's
they
fine.
were tombs. I think that they were probably some sort of energy directors or
Yep,
generators and or maybe like factories for energy, like kind of
could be.
like alchemist. I've heard of like things like where they could kind of like convert hydrogen to another thing or something like. I'm a dumb carpenter, so I can't explain it, but you know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
think that what I'm trying to say is I don't think it's a place where the king was buried.
No. Well,
That's
so
not what
first
it
of
was
all,
intended
yes,
for, at
first of all,
least.
they called the King's Chamber the main big one. And
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
the three main pyramids were designed after a star group. I can't remember the name. And when they look back in time, the exact position of these three pyramids matches that star system, the Pleiades. That's it, about 13,000 years ago, which then kind of goes in respect of they could be that old. They've never found a body in there. The only this guy called Cheops. The only other thing that they ever found of this guy was a little statue about this big. That's the only thing they found, and they said that they built this thing in 20 years. Well, they had another guy calculate it out. So if they built that thing in 20 years, we're talking some like 20 million blocks of stone for that one pyramid. That means that they would have to cut, shape, build, place in the pyramid a block of stone every 20 minutes, 7 days, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. He said that's not possible. Not with that, not with cutting stone technology. No, not what they had. It is not even remotely possible.
Do you think I want to get back to your books and kind of your
Okay.
your stuff as well, but I just out of my own curiosity,
Yep.
do you think that I heard a theory? Literally, I was listening to a podcast yesterday about this. That's why I'm like so. But I heard a theory that the stones were cast and not placed,
Could
as
be.
as if like concrete, the way we pour concrete today. And I get like there's this whole idea, well, this is like 1600,000 years ago, whatever, like different,
Yeah.
like whatever,
Yeah.
11,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. At some point, those numbers just become so big to me that they're not even real. Like
Yeah, exactly.
it could be 100 years. It doesn't matter. I was not even a fucking twinkle in the sky. Like there was.
Neither was
Right.
I.
So but there's this idea that like we have better, quote unquote, better technology. I think that we have different technology. I think that like there was like kind of a fork where we're like, okay, we're gonna build things with steam engines and motors and then eventually electricity. And then
Mhm.
they had like a different form of power, a different form of mechanics that if we look at like the same way, like if I dropped my cell phone right now and the battery was dead and I dropped it into 1400s, they'd look at like this black square. It's just a black rectangle. They'd be like, this guy is an idiot. This isn't going to help him eat. This isn't going to help him do anything. Like,
Yeah.
why would he have such primitive technology? It's just a black square. Get a bow and arrow, dumbass. Like, that's how they look at
Yeah.
me. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so we see a lot of the things that they have. So I guess the different all I'm trying to say is I feel like they had maybe the idea that they had more primitive technology doesn't make sense to me. I
No.
think it's like a fake part of history
Yeah.
that's not real. I think that they just had a different form of technology. But again, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I believe in like Tartaria. I believe in all of these like the Younger Dryas impact theory. I believe all of these things. So I think that the civilizations as we know it are not true. I think history's fake. So,
I agree, and I think there was a more advanced civilization on Earth that collapsed for whatever reason we don't know yet. Um, in so a couple things. So in China, they've actually found this skeleton. They dug this guy's skeleton up. And they found a little like watch on his arm that looks like a modern day wristwatch.
holy shit.
Yeah, and that there's more than that. But the other thing is in India. So in India, the oldest culture they found in India, which dates about 4 or 5 thousand years old now, they found all these books and scriptures. So they're translating them. And at that time, this is like 100 years ago, they thought, oh, this is bullshit. This can't be real. So the first 3 to 5 thousand pages they translated are all about the maintenance, how to build, how to maintain, and how to fly ships, the
Whoa.
oldest ones they have. And so in my head, then they said, well, they must be writing science fiction. Well, they didn't write science fiction then. But by our concept in the 1800s, the guys who were translating stuff, so this doesn't make any sense to us. But now that we have airplanes and stuff, you can go, well, you know what? Yeah, maybe they did have flying vessels. And then the oldest sites in India, a lot of them have remains of radioactive activity, which could mean that they had, if they had flying ships, maybe they had nuclear weapons as well, or something like that. And they, maybe they blew each other up. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard sorry, I'm just doing some Googling right now because I was just
Yeah,
thinking about this stuff, but I have heard about airships or flying ships
yeah,
that were around in like the 1800s or like the late 1700s. And that's why I was just Googling when airplanes were like actually like
yeah.
invented.
18 something, I think.
It was the Wright brothers flew the first
Yeah,
flight
yeah.
in 1903. So that's
1903.
only,
Yeah,
that's what, 120 years ago?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
they had airships apparently, flying ships. Like you
Yeah.
hear about not zeppelins, but like those like massive, like they're basically blimps. That's the word I'm
Yeah,
looking for.
yeah.
And they were airships. That's like literally
Yeah.
what the way that it was. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. I don't know. I again, all of that I've always I think that there's this like paradigm where we think that ancient civilizations, if they had the same thing as us, or if they had better technology, more advanced technology, I've always chalked it up to just like different technology. They just evolved
Yeah.
differently. They just
Yeah.
had different things. Like the way that we use water or steam, maybe they use plasma. Maybe they use something
Yeah.
like maybe they have a completely different technology where, like I said, it'd be the same as like someone from the 1400s seeing a dead cell phone. They'd
Yeah.
be like, "What do you mean you carry around a brick? Like it's just a small
Yeah.
light
Exactly.
brick. You can't
Exactly.
do anything with it. You
Yeah.
can't kill an enemy with it. You can't use it for storage. You can't do anything with it. Like
Yeah.
why would you have that? That's so dumb. That's
Yeah.
the way that I think about it. It's like it's a completely different technology. We live in a world that's like fake currency, fake everything. Like if
Yep.
they were to see us, they'd be like, "These are worse." Like if biblical
Relics.
slaves saw the way that
Yeah.
we live, they're like, "Wait, we only have to give 20% away. You guys give 60% away,
Yeah.
and we're the slaves." They
Yeah.
look at us like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Yeah. So there's other books I've read about the research about the pyramids. They believe what you said, that that is either plasma or some sort of water generating the way they built the inside and the chambers. And another guy has a theory that they use sound vibrations to build these things, and they
mhm.
think that they use sound waves to lift the blocks and move them somehow, because you couldn't make these things in that course of time. So there's been a lot of different research that, of course, nobody acknowledges, but you think about it and you go, hmm. I actually wove that into my science fiction series. This guy has got to, like you just said, wake up the pyramids and some other places on Earth so that we can communicate to the other races out in the universe.
Mhm.
You know, so the concept behind that series is that we're not alone in the universe. There's millions of races out there. We're just kind of in isolation until we go through a testing program and get accepted, basically. So that's where this
And
guy,
then we're told that our race is actually divided into other races, and that's what we think of as other races, when really
yeah,
we're like one human race.
yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy.
exactly. Because when you think about it, well, there's like I don't know what 2 billion star systems in this one galaxy, and then there's trillions of galaxies out there, which means that there is potentially, even if there's a one planet that has life in this galaxy, there's potentially trillions of life forms on different worlds all over the universe.
Yeah.
So it's the thought is astronomical that we're alone. Like it can't be. And I think what you said earlier about God, yeah, I believe that there's some sort of energy that holds the cosmos together. It's nothing like any of the religions are portraying. They kind of believe in some sort of entity. I believe that yes, there is something out there, spiritual, that you can tap into if you want. But of course, if there's something like that or some form of that or energy, people say, well, why would he allow God to do these things or kill these people or torture them? Well, he can't be there for everybody or her or it, whatever you want to say, because it's impossible that this thing could watch everybody. Not remotely possible, I think. So my theory is that you're here to live your life the best way you can and enjoy it and enhance your life so that hopefully when you pass on, you're going on to the next realm.
Yeah.
And whatever that is. For me, it's a writer. I love writing books that entertain people. I have so many reviews from people. In fact, I just got one this week from this lady on my newest book. I haven't even released this book out yet, and she says, "I just finished your book. I am floored. Your thought processes are way beyond my skills, but you did it again. I read your book while taking a bath. Water was getting cold. My body was turning into a prune, but I had to finish it. You hooked me, and I couldn't put it down." Like if I can draw somebody out of their life and just have them escape reality for a while and enjoy something, then for me, that's like being a rock star. That's what I love doing. And when I get stuff like reviews like that, that enhances my life, and I give these people a joy that they never had before, which is good. And I usually weave in a lot of comedy as well. So I talk about paranormal and urban fantasy and a lot of ghost stuff. Um, so in most of my books, I weave in a lot of comedy as well. And in all of my books, I make sure the good person wins somehow, so their life becomes better somehow. Because you like all these, Stephen King wrote all these books, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, but if you're tearing down these people and destroying their lives, that's not my idea of a good read, personally. You know, so I try to make that person a better person somehow
Yeah,
and
yeah.
enhance their life.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in I've never been I've never read a Stephen King novel, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of the movies here and there, but I've never super been into horror, to be honest.
Nope, me either.
I've always been I like a hero's journey. That is literally what
Yeah.
I every single book, every single show, every single movie, I like a hero's journey. I've never been one for watching things that puts me in a state of like anxiety or anger or anything like that. I only literally only enjoy to watch things that uplift me. Otherwise, I'm like, why
Yeah.
would I do something that makes me feel worse?
Yes.
For me, that just doesn't make sense. I think like fentanyl would be more productive in my life. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like there's
Yeah.
no I I always just put it into that perspective of like, is this putting my brain into a better place? Is this lifting my vibration? Is this increasing my
Hmm.
energy level?
Totally
I
agree.
still rewatch like cartoons. I'm a nerd. I like anime. I like cartoons. I like stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
still rewatch like the Dragon Ball Z, the Naruto episodes when I'm
Gotcha.
like working out because
Yeah.
those are like that's what I originally that was my Superman. That was my Spider-Man for me. Like I think of that as like that's
Yeah.
my motivating, I go into that. And I've always been like, dude, people can laugh, people can make fun, but dude, if that gets me through a workout or if that puts me into a better state of mind and puts me into a
Hmm.
position where it's like, oh, it sounds corny and cheesy, but if these characters that I look up to have gotten through this, and that, then like I can get through this next thing.
Yeah.
It's like again, everybody's different. They like their own thing, but it is cool to I love a hero's journey. That's all I'm
Yeah. Me
trying to
too.
say. I
Me too.
love that.
When I was young, I had close to 5,000 comic books. So, I always, when my writing tends to be very visual because of that, I write like in scenes
Hmm.
in a comic book. And, and that's kind of probably what really got me into writing. And speaking of that, tomorrow I'm going to be in Vancouver at the Comic Con. They have a Comic Con on Main Street.
Oh, crazy. Is that
Yeah,
tomorrow?
that's tomorrow. Yeah, 3102 Main Street. I'll be there. They have a Comic Con. It's just a smaller one, but I'll be there with my books. So if anybody's interested, come on down and I can chat. I love chatting, like I said, to people because some of the stories I get from people, I got wilder ones than that one I told you. I mean, there's just some crazy stuff. But yeah, so and I love just hanging out and talking to people and yeah, that's it.
I'm
So
gonna
that's
have
where I'm
to
going to be tomorrow.
I'm gonna have to look that up. But have you written any like kind of like conspiracy theory or anything like that? Like I know you have like science fiction and such, but have
Yeah.
you written anything? And I know you said that there was like the pyramids, but if I were to grab any of your books, what would you recommend
Probably the
for
science
me?
fiction ones because they weave all the pyramids in there, and a lot of the research I've done in the nonfiction book I'm starting is about all the stuff in the pyramids. That's woven in there. So the whole concept is this guy who thinks he's had a guardian angel his whole life. She's actually from the Pleiades. She's actually an agent that's been watching him to see if she can help him go through all the the different levels of the training.
Whoa,
But the problem is, and like I said, because there's millions of races out there, so the problem is there's a third race that doesn't want us to ascend. So they're hunting down all the agents and killing them. So now she has to cut herself off from her homeworld and reveal herself to this guy and needs his help.
I'm in,
So he
dude.
has, yeah,
I'm in.
that's called Seeds of Ascension. And
Seeds of
and
Ascension. I'm getting
yeah.
it, dude.
Yeah, Season Ascension Gateways. That's a two science fiction series. The one book cover is that one right here. If
Yeah,
you can see
yeah.
it, that one.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, and so there's a lot of stuff about kind of like conspiracy, but it's all about the fact that there's this all this knowledge that we haven't been told about, and the fact that really we aren't alone. And like I said, there's got to be millions and millions of races out there. That's
Probably,
my belief.
maybe. Either
Yeah.
that or not. I don't know. Honestly,
And
I
maybe they're keeping us away from us for a reason until we get to a point like in Star Trek. I just watched the early Star Trek series where they're not allowed to communicate with us until there's a point in time where we are advanced enough that we could get it. Because I think if they were to come down right now and say, "Oh yeah, we're from the Pleiades," guess what? All the major religions in the world would crash,
yeah.
and then it'd be probably mass, suicide or something because of hysteria, because you'd wipe out, like all the big religions of the world. I'm not just talking
Oh,
about
dude, we would
Christianity,
need some serious
Muslims,
safe
everything.
spaces at that point, dude.
Exactly,
That
exactly.
that would be game over, dude.
Yeah.
That actually yeah, they're waiting for a time for when we stop like what, bombing people in other countries.
Maybe, yeah. And until we
Yeah.
get along, that's right. There's another group I belong to called IONS, which is called the Institute of Noetic Sciences. It was started by one of the guys that went to the moon, Edgar
Whoa.
Mitchell. Yeah. So he started this group. So his whole idea was trying to prove how the woo-woo stuff scientifically works, like how to prove this. And he did a lot of experiments and things, and I read a lot of the stuff. It's quite cool. I actually met him at an event. And so I said, Edgar, I says, you were in Roswell 2 years after that event with the supposed aliens
In
that crash landed.
84 or whatever, when was that? Roswell?
67, I think it was, or
60. Holy
66.
shit. Oh yeah, because it
It was,
was
it was
20 years after the war.
Yeah, exactly. So apparently, as a ship crash landed, and as you probably know, all those people said no, there was actually a ship there, and they said, oh no, it's just a weather balloon.
Hmm.
So I said that, and he says, so well, he says, all I can tell you is this. He says, I was there, yeah, you're right, in the bar talking to these guys 2 years after that event. They saw a ship, they saw bodies, and they carted them all away. He says, so the problem is today you'll never find this stuff because it's buried in all the archives or split up in all the American departments. But he says, yeah, all these guys, they said, yeah, they definitely carted bodies out of there. They definitely carted a ship away, but you'll
Holy
never find it
shit.
now. Yeah.
That's
So
crazy, man.
it is crazy. And like I said, you get some crazy stories from talking to people. At least I do. I've got other ones that are wilder than that one about the lady. If we got time, my wife's probably gonna be waking up soon. So,
I've got endless
um,
time. I can go forever. I love these
Okay,
conversations.
so here's another crazy story. So this guy, one of my customers actually, he says we're fixing his truck up. He goes, "Yeah, I'm moving to Nova Scotia to live with my mom." I says, "Why are you doing that?" He goes, "Do you want to hear the story?" I said, "I love stories." He says, "So I about 8 years earlier," he says, "my daughter was gang raped by the Angels, the Hell's Angels." He
Right.
says, "Now," he says, "we went to court." And they threw it out, and I think she
Allegedly, we don't want to talk about, we don't want to.
Yeah,
I'm
they
scared of
said
those guys,
well, they
so.
said the problem is this lawyer said he said how do I get my revenge? He goes, well, the problem is there's this 20 against one, so you'll never win. He goes, okay, I'll do it my way. So I did the research, and this happened actually. This guy burnt down 3 or 4 clubhouses of the Hells Angels in Vancouver area, shot and killed at least 20 of these guys. The police caught him on the way to Hunter Mile House to do another one, and threw him in jail. They gave him only 7 years in jail, and he said, "I thought they would get me because they have huge connections everywhere. These guys,
Yeah.
because they're doctors, lawyers, all kinds of stuff now, but they didn't." He said, "I'm surprised." So he had his name changed. He said, "I'm going to go live with my mom." He says, "More than likely," he says, they'll probably get me one day. I don't care." He says, "I got enough. I'm good." Then one of my mechanics that worked for me walks out. He goes, "Oh, I know that guy. His son's in my classroom." And I said to him, I said, "Jason, don't ever piss that guy off, whatever you do." He goes, "Okay." Then I told him the story. He goes, "Holy cow!"
That's
So
insanity.
yeah,
That
so
actually
I wove that
is,
into a book.
that's
So
scary as hell,
yeah.
man.
Anyways, I probably got to go because my wife she's just getting up. She's making her tea. So
All good.
it's been a riot chatting. So my books are on Amazon. They're all available as ebooks and print. And half of them are in Audible right now as well. So a lot of these are going to Audible too.
Did you narrate it?
No, no, I hire a professional. There's a company that you can hire that basically doesn't cost you anything. You hire professional actors and actresses, and they narrate it. Because
Hmm.
there's no way you can do your voice to all the different characters in a book properly,
Yeah, yeah.
whereas these people can. So yeah. So
That's
yeah.
cool. I'm
And
gonna check those out. Well, hey man, thank you so much for your time today. I super appreciate it. And
you're welcome.
dude, it was a blast talking to you because I love the conspiracy stuff. I love
Me
diving into
too.
the
The
maybe
unknown and the
alter.
things that the average person doesn't kind of accept as possible reality. Yeah, that's where my mind goes all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the exact same. My fiance is the exact same. Her and I could just sit and talk about this shit for hours. It's like so
Yep.
crazy, dude.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Well,
And
if I see you tomorrow, yeah, come down and I'll get you interested in a couple of those books, the science fiction ones.
yeah, I'm
So
gonna have to check those out, man. Thank you so much. And
you're
dude,
welcome.
you have an open invitation. Honestly, I could sit here and
Okay.
chat with you for hours, hours.
Yeah, I'll
Honestly,
definitely come back and do another one later. You bet.
awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Much love and peace out. Have a good one.
Yeah, love and peace. You too. Take
Bye now.
care.